everybody. This is Rob Keens with the Freedom Report, and we are back today to talk about legislation and other things with 𝙁𝙊𝙇𝙊𝙒, the Executive Director, Daniel Diaz. And also, I've invited my good friend, Stuart Englert, who wrote the book Rigged, to sit in on the conversation with us and talk to us about his recent experience in the gold and silver market. We're going to talk silver prices and everything else. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Rob, for having us on.
Good to
I
be
wanted to
back with you,
start.
Rob.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to have you back on, Stuart. I'm going back to the older days of doing roundtable interviews like I used to do on my channel and through those virtual conferences, now that we've got the gold and silver price back up. And Daniel, I wanted to start with you.
Yeah.
I'd worked a long time with C4SM, and a lot of things happened. When Jim first started that, it really was just an idea that turned into this grassroots organization that turned into doing all these awesome things. And it's grown so much. Real quick before we get into anything else, tell us about the growth of C4SM and where you guys are headed and what initiatives you've got going on right now.
Yeah, well, first I want to thank you for being a part of the board at C4SM and doing everything that you did. Without your help, I don't think we would have gotten as far as we did.
Mm.
After Jim passed away, there was a major vacuum that none of us could fill. And you, myself, and Reno started the executive team, and we tried to fill his shoes. Nobody could. And
Mm.
we were very, very successful over the last year, especially with legislation in Florida and
Mhm.
Missouri. We helped lobby in Alaska. We testified in Montana. We were involved in Texas, a little bit in Louisiana, all over the country where there was sound money legislation being pushed. Um, and where we are now, I mean, I think the strategy with Cities for Sound Money was the first few years we were just kind of building our reputation, and then when they hired me as a legislative director and then later executive director, went full throttle in lobbying because that was Jim's vision. It wasn't just to be an education organization. It was actually to get boots on the ground and push, because he was a former state senator in New Hampshire. And him and I were a great team. And what we focused on was Florida. We realized that if Florida made gold and silver legal tender, and we knew Texas was being worked on by another group, Economic War Room, that if both Florida and Texas made gold and silver legal tender, it would just be a domino effect. And right now, when I started, we had 5 states that made gold and silver legal tender. After 2 years of being hired by C4SM, we're now at 11 states, and we were directly involved in at least half of those states that got it done.
Oh, and by
And
the way, before you keep going, you didn't mention Missouri, Patrick Holland, and the Freedom Initiative. I know that Patrick has worked tirelessly for years, and C4SM was out there helping. We did Pork Fest together. We did a lot of radio together and things like
yeah.
that. And Missouri has probably the best legislation out of all of them, I would say, just from my perspective. And we were instrumental in helping Missouri Freedom Initiative, but have to give credit to Patrick for really doing a lot of work out there for a number of years.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're still working with Patrick now. I mean, if he'll say that Missouri would not have been possible without us. I say that it would not have been possible without him. We kind of keep
Mhm.
throwing credit at each other. But the reality is, Patrick laid the foundation. He called us. The second year was pushed, and that's when was deployed in Missouri for about 2 months. We got it all the way to the finish line, just as it did in the first year. It failed for political reasons. And then last year, it looked like it was going to die. But if it wasn't for the quick thinking of Senator Moon, the Missouri legislation would not have gotten through. It was stuck in committee. They added it into a bill that the governor and the leadership wanted passed, a banking bill, which is funny. We got gold and silver through on a banking bill in Missouri. And Missouri, hands down, is the best sound money legislation on the planet. There isn't a country or
Mhm.
other government jurisdiction that has made gold and silver, all gold and silver, legal tender. Physical gold and silver, even if it has 1% gold in a round or an ingot, it's legal tender according to the law in Missouri. I mean, and with all these successes, with the TV show that we're producing that you were a part of for until you stepped down to focus on kinesis and your other work. I mean, C4SM is growing. We've hired a director of operations. We now have a media specialist. We restarted our show, a new show called Sound Money Matters. We now have a physical headquarters in Phoenix, Arizona. We were blessed to be given for free, a complete donation, a suite in Lynette Zhang's floor. She is a
Mhm.
huge supporter of Citizens Sound Money, and she wanted to help us, support us, and she's given us a physical location. So we've moved all our corporate headquarters to Phoenix. We're gonna go fly down there. And
Hey,
actually,
congratulations on
yeah,
that, on getting the office and also teaming with Lynette. She's been a longtime friend and she's been a huge advocate for the precious metal space for a number of years. So that's awesome. Congrats.
yeah, thank you, thank you. And with that, we're also chartering an international trade association called the Sound Money Trade Association. The vision of that is to bring to lobby for the industry. We have found that in the United States, the gold and silver industry has been underrepresented when it comes to
Mhm.
government policy.
Mhm.
Yeah, you have us, you have Sound Money Defense League, you have Economic War Room, but there isn't just an entity for the industry. We try to fill that void at C4SM, but we've been working for over a year with 6 companies, drafting governing documents, also the industry standards for physical and digital gold and silver, definitions for the entire industry to follow, so that we're not saying different things and meaning another. So what the vision was is to be kind of like a World Gold Council, LBMA, COMEX alternative for gold and silver companies that believe in the sound money mission. And I think that's important because the preamble of the governing document really makes it clear. And since we're the chartering organization, we have a non-voting board seat, but we do have some charter authority that if the organization goes off the handles and is not pushing sound money principles, we have some things that we can do to try to rectify that. It's going to be the most independent entity under Citizens for Sound Money. The board of directors, the ones we appointed, they're going to be in there for a year. And the whole idea is we have 5 class memberships. The memberships are called markets. For those who are like exchanges, people who are mint, gold, and silver. We have dealers, which are wholesalers and dealers. We have associations for nonprofits and other trade associations that want to join. And the other 2 are auditors, so like NGC, PCGS. That's another class membership, and I can't remember the last one. Providers would be
Mhm.
like Goldback or those who actually issue products. So those are
Mhm.
5 classes, and those are the 5 board seats. And it was like a dream that kind of just came into our minds. I was meeting with Larry Hilton at NASA of all places, and we said, wouldn't it be great if we could do like a Bretton Woods in the private sector, where the
Mhm.
all the industry come together, we create equal weights and measures, we create standard fees for the institutional settlement, and also for, let's say, retail stores that say, hey, I have Kinesis gold backs or gold orums. I have gold backs. Let's figure out an exchange rate amongst all those who join the trade association, so that we have a functional monetary global policy that's sound money focused. So we're super excited. We have filed the paperwork. We're filling up the trade. We filed for the trademark, and we're finishing the paperwork for the IRS to designate us as a 501(c)(6) trade association. And it's headquartered in Phoenix. So it kind of all worked out perfectly, the donation and us starting this association. So we're about to invite the next wave of companies. It was 6 companies who are the founding companies, including us as a nonprofit of this trade association. And now we have a list of 15 companies for wave 2. And then the list, which are companies that we work close with and our founding members have worked close with, that know the CEOs of those companies. And then
Mhm.
wave 3 are more for industries that we don't really have a close relationship. That list is like 20 or 30 companies, and nonprofits and so forth. So we think it's necessary for a sound economy and really just a sound money movement for the industry to be represented, and the Sound Money Trade Association is what we have created. So yes, we're growing. We have the TV show coming out next year. We are pushing social media to grow our base, and lobbying is still there. I haven't even touched on that. Um,
Mhm.
so far, of the 11 states that make gold and silver legal tender, they're red states. we are really excited. We've actually helped the bullion dealers in Maryland. They've reached out to us. We have a super PAC called Economic Freedom PAC, and Brett Stelfox from Golden Eagle is like, "Hey, can you take a look at this law?" I'm like, "Sure." I looked at it. I'm like, "Well, the law's dead. It died in committee." He's like, "No, my brother said that it's in the budget." I'm like, "Wait a minute." So I looked, and you know what the Democrats did? It failed in committee. So what they did is they took that legislation out, stuck it in the budget, which is not the normal process, and not a single hearing was heard. And we had 72 hours to try to kill it. So Brett said, "Yeah, let's try." I said, "Brett, look, you have a 0% chance of stopping this if you do nothing. We have a 50% chance of stopping it if we spin up all my political contacts. We use the super PAC to do phone calls, robocalls, everything." And he's like, "Yeah, let's do it." He called a bunch of bullion dealers who didn't know about the issue. They donated to the effort. It failed, right? Meaning that we didn't succeed.
Well, it was literally last minute. Like you weren't
Literally
giving
last
like
minute.
enough. You had like a couple of days to do this. It was
I had
ridiculous.
24 hours to get up a website, get all my political consultants up, everything.
Yeah.
Just 24 hours. We had everything up and running by that was Friday. Media. We were in lobbying in Florida. Remember when we went to the meeting to the governor's club? I had to
Yeah.
step out because I was getting phone calls from people in Maryland asking, "What is this bullion tax?" And we literally did everything we could, short notice, and we didn't succeed. So now, what I told Brett and the other bullion dealers, like, "Look, um, you guys need to create an association. You guys need a trade association of the bullion dealers in Maryland and hire a full-time lobbyist or hire a lobbying firm to keep an eye on the legislation. And you need to have them push to get rid of the sales tax
Mhm.
and everything else. We expand that to capital gains tax and also legal tender. So because and then Brett Stelfox, who is the one of the owners of Golden Eagle, was interviewed by Fox, and now the leadership in Maryland are coming to us wanting to fix the situation because when
Perfect.
the law went into effect July 1st, all the bullion dealers, 1 year from the what you call it, their profits from 1 year previous have dropped 80%.
Ooh.
Again, around an 80% drop in August. Again, another 80% is roughly 80% business gone because the other states that don't have sales tax, it's a small state. They're driving 30 minutes to an hour to buy bullion. And Brett's called these other gold and silver bullion dealers in the other states, and their businesses have increased almost 100% year over year
Right.
versus Maryland. So
So what
the
Maryland did inadvertently was just push business out of the state and hurt the business owners
and
and
killing
reduce
the
their tax
industry.
receipts.
There are bullion dealers right now that don't know if they're going to survive because
Yeah.
nobody's buying in
Yeah.
their stores. Now, Golden Eagle's fine; they're a wholesaler; they do the whole country. But the other smaller dealers, they're suffering. So leadership now has an incentive. So I say that because Maryland might be the first state, blue state in the country to make gold and silver legal tender because there is incentive that they realize that the getting rid of the sales tax has killed an entire industry. They're losing tax revenue because they're going outside of the state. So that is kind of my excitement for 2026,
Yeah,
trying to
very
get
good.
Maryland to make gold and silver legal tender. Now, we're still working to fix Florida. We got still an extra year in Texas to try to fix Texas, and we also have Montana, who doesn't have a session, that we're working very hard in Montana. I mean, they should make gold and silver legal tender. It's in their motto. It says oro y plata right there, gold and silver on their state seal. They should make gold and silver legal tender. It makes complete sense. And then
Yeah.
Alaska, the great thing about Alaska is we got it through the second to last committee in the House. They have one more committee in the House to send it to the Senate. We're hoping to get it in Alaska. And there's a bunch of other states that we're looking at. We're working with Goldback. They have a full-time lobbyist now, so we have a strategy meeting tomorrow to really focus on which states we want to focus on. But with all that said, we are a nonprofit. We're the only nonprofit organization in the state, I mean, in the country that is lobbying for gold and silver. There isn't another one, and it's not cheap. So we're always looking for those who want to join the sound money movement to join Citizens for Sound Money. If you are listening to this and you love what you're hearing, that we're creating a trade association, that we're lobbying, we're pushing sound money, we're getting rid of taxes, become part of the movement. This is not possible without you. You are the reason why we exist, because we understand the suffering of the fiat economy, where 78% of you that are listening are living paycheck to paycheck with not $1,000 to your name. And we're the only nonprofit representing the people and the entire industry for the sound money movement, trying to get rid of what I call the debt enslavement mechanism of a fiat currency and bring back liberty and freedom. Jim Forsyth said silver is freedom, gold is freedom. And we want to create a sound money economy parallel with the fiat economy so that we can choose to save our economic energy into gold and silver. So if you want to support us so that we continue doing the work that we're doing, please join Cities for Sound Money. It's $25 a year. Or if you want to get a digital ounce of silver, you can donate $100. So really, you're paying like $48 versus 100, and you'll get about $52 worth of digital silver from Kinesis.
Awesome. So Stuart, I want to bring you in. By the way, Daniel, thanks for the update. The reason that update was so long is because C4SM, we were just a bunch of guys and we just decided we need to do all these things because, as you said, the industry didn't have these pieces. And you kind of need all these pieces to work together to really get the movement going. And credit to Sound Money Defense League and a lot of these others, they're doing their work. Sound Money Defense League does a lot around sales tax in states. They've done yeoman's work there. But we really needed more than just what was going on to get all the things done that needed to get done. C4Sim's trying to fill in those in. So I'm going to bring in Stuart. Stuart, you started covering this lately. I know you've been covering gold and silver for a long time. We were talking about how you bought, off air about how you bought your first silver stocks in 2005. You've been interested in this. You wrote the book Rigged, which is a recounting of the GATA research on market manipulation and what's going on, as well as adding some of your own. And then you were recently covering the legislation as well. How did you kind of see the legislation from your perspective, and why did you get interested in wanting to report on this?
Well, first of all, I want to applaud Citizens for Sound Money Defense League, all the other sound money advocates that have brought this issue, sound money legislation, to the fore, at the state level, and awaken these state lawmakers about their constitutional oath. Okay, that's the main thing that I see. So I want to applaud them for bringing this to public attention at the state level. And by the way, I don't have other than being a sound money advocate myself. I don't sell bullion. I don't have Kinesis shares or tokens, so I don't really have a vested interest. I'm a former journalist. And I worked, as a newspaper reporter and magazine editor for 30 some years. So I look at this, I try to look at it from a non-biased perspective, objective perspective, and say, what is in the best interest of the monetary system and sound money and honest money? And I was hearing this debate and dispute going on between some sound money folks. And I said, this needs coverage. People need to know what's going on in this space. Everybody that owns precious metals, everybody that wants to own precious metals, anybody wants to transact in them, they need to know about this issue. So if it comes up at their state level, they can participate. And that's what drove me to look at this issue. I agree that gold and silver are freedom from the fiat system that we have. But, I also see a threat in there when you're marrying what I want to say, digital and tokenized gold and silver to an electronic platform. There's a potential to take us further into this enslaving all digital mass surveillance state and system. And so that's where I look. I see good in it, and I think we're going to go the digital route. I don't think there's any way to get around it. I mean, 85% of financial transactions today are done electronically through debit cards and credit cards and mobile platforms. I think cash only makes up 12 to 15% of all transactions. So I see that's the route we're going, but I think we need to ask serious questions as we walk into this.
Yeah.
And it has to be for the benefit of the entire sound money movement. Everybody needs to get on the same page. Even if there's internal disputes and disagreements, we all need to be pulling in the same direction so that we don't get so that the system doesn't get commandeered by the establishment. I mean, we've seen that with the cryptos. Think about what's happened to Bitcoin. You know, it was supposed to be decentralized. It was supposed to be private, peer-to-peer. And the establishment got a hold of it, right? Now it's centralized. There's crypto ETFs and derivatives. And now the government wants a slice of the profits through taxation. So I support the constitutional clause that said only gold and silver can be made legal tender. And I say, yeah, let's go there. But even in the Florida legislation, think about it. The red flag to me was that the Florida state entities, agencies cannot accept physical gold and silver. They will,
Yeah.
you know, that's the way I understand it. And I know that the final regs are still coming out, correct, Daniel? They're due November 1st.
Yeah, we have a copy of the regulations, and those regulations are
Are
specific.
they draft legislation or draft regulations or the final ones?
Well, they are draft, but they're the final draft, and there hasn't been any changes and no feedback from the industry. So I think this is it. I don't think they're gonna go back and to the drawing board because they sent out the draft to everybody that was interested. We read through them. They look fine, and they're only for money services businesses. It's not for physical bullion dealers. Has nothing to do with physical. And when there was confusion, which we talked about when you interviewed us, that if you read the Florida law without the context that we took an entire section of Florida current statute regulatory framework of the money services businesses, when you do that, you have to put that entire section in the law. So when you're reading it straight through, it seems like we're forcing or the Florida's forcing bullion dealers and those that are just using vaults to fall within the money services business requirements of insurance and so forth. That is not the case. When you read the regulations and rules that the state has pushed out, it's abundantly clear that the context that section is only for those that are holding
But
gold and silver
my
for
point was,
transactions.
Daniel, that these state entities cannot accept physical gold and silver, correct?
Right. That's
Okay.
they can't. Right.
And that raises my issue. Well, is it truly a legal tender law then? Because the Constitution says states may make nothing but gold and silver
Yeah.
legal tender. It doesn't talk about digital or tokenized or electronic platforms. And I know that's an idealistic view, but again, that's my concern. Is when you that's
Yeah.
a huge concern of mine.
Of the 11 states that make gold and silver legal tender, not a single one has the states or allows the states to take physical. And that is a major roadblock that no state wants to handle because it's going to create a major fiscal note. And forcing the state to accept physical bullion is a non-starter. We'll never get any legislation, especially legal tender legislation, through. It has to be optional and not a single
But
state.
why is that? Because the federal government has addicted all these states to all this federal largesse and handouts, and they don't want to conflict with the federal government and the Federal Reserve notes,
No,
which has a fiat monopoly system over currency right
I
now.
want to jump in
that
here
is not.
I want to
That's
jump in here just for a moment
Mhm.
because I know that that is the view or the perception, but I was actually boots on the ground along with Daniel in Florida, not all the
right.
states, but I talked with Patrick in Missouri, you know, for a couple of years. We did a lot of events, and specifically when we were sitting in the senator's offices, the House representatives' offices, the Senate Bank and Finance Committee. They said we don't want to spend a dollar on state funds, and if we have to take physical gold and silver, we have to set up a way to ingest that, to store it, to price it, to assay it. Because if you look at when you get your gold and silver tender, and I've got just a coin here from Kinesis, and see if I can get this on the screen, just silver, right? Well, this is from a third party mint. So they're going to have to assay it because it's not coming from like an LBMA approved warehouse with a chain of custody receipt, that type of thing. So when it goes out into the public and then you take it back in, there's costs in making sure that that's actual gold and silver, unless we went back to the federal government issuing, like making American Eagles as legal tender and at market value, not the $50 stamp, but at market value. So part of the problem, we only got about 10 minutes here, guys, on this meeting, so I'll jump out and let you guys talk. Part of the issue is this is new to the states. We haven't had gold as money really by itself dating back to 1913. And I think the issue for me was that they don't understand gold and silver. So I kind of look at it, this is the first wave of legislation. And as the states, or as industry comes to it, and as the states try to build this out, they're going to realize some of the issues with the legislation. We're going to have to go back for round two. And I guess when I looked at it, it was so complex to get this legislation passed because, Stuart, of the laws in place surrounding the fiat system, that it's hard to do in one full swing. It really is hard to get everything in one full swing. It is a major
you
issue.
Described it. You
I
both
100%
described it
agree with you.
as sausage making, and I
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah.
But when you're making sausage, you have to be cautious about what gets put in the sausage
Right.
and whether you're going to consume it or not. Okay.
Right.
Because I don't know
Right.
if you remember Upton Sinclair's book,
Mhm.
it can be deadly. It can be costly if you eat some bad sausage. Okay.
It's
Yeah.
But my article, let me continue if you don't mind.
Yeah.
My article, I think, has precipitated a debate, and I've had people contact me with different views, and you probably have too, Daniel. And among them, I got a call from a representative from Goldbacks who said, we're not included in the legislation.
Right.
We should be included in the legislation. Why aren't we included in the legislation? She thanked me for the article, and I'm hoping your new organization is going to bring them in and on board here, so that Goldbacks can be used. I mean, Goldbacks has a Florida notes, right?
Yeah.
I also had some communication with Stefan Gleason and James Turk, who gave me some pushback on something Ron Paul used to say, and I'm a big Ron Paul advocate. He said we don't need legal tender laws to do this. I mean, right now, kinesis can be used any place, right? Kinesis court.
There's a federal
Right.
law. There's a federal law that impedes that. So if it is true that gold and silver is still legal tender per the Constitution, but there are federal statutory laws which stand in the way of using regular gold and silver as legal tender without the people in the states asserting the right. So if you go to the 10th Amendment, the 10th Amendment says all rights not expressly given, fall to the states and the people. And so the federal government's overstepped their bounds, and what needs to happen is the people need to rise up and say enough of this. And I'll give it back to Daniel. I think that's what the business association or the industry association is going to promote, is getting the people on board with this and getting the changes that we need and kind of taking this to the next level, across the board. I don't know, Daniel, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, two things. I want to go back to the physical bullion part. That the number one reason, one, yes, is sausage making, and two, the different Department of Revenues and those who did the fiscal impact notes in the different states, Missouri, Florida, and so forth. They basically said that if they took physical bullion, they were estimating, like in Missouri, it was going to cost upwards of $7 million to implement and accept physical. In Florida, it was something like $10 or $11 million for physical. So we took that off the table because that wasn't an option. The solution we presented to Missouri and Florida was that they do a licensing with bullion dealers and those that are already saying and accepting, and then instead of the state taking physical bullion, those bullion dealers would then take the metal, and instead of giving cash to the customer for selling that metal, they send it to the state. That is a workaround that we provided that neither state went forward to create, because that whole licensing regulatory framework would need to be created, which is why we did what we did with the money services businesses in Florida. So that's number one. That's the number one argument from every state that I've lobbied in, from New Hampshire, South Carolina, everywhere. It's the fiscal impact of taking physical bullion because they're not set up that way. It's not the Constitution or federal notes or anything. Number two, in regards to Goldback, Goldback is one of the founding members. They have a seat on the board of the Sound Money Trade Association, and we lobby together in Florida and Texas and all over. So we're very strong partners with Goldback. In fact, we're having a strategy meeting tomorrow with Kim Coleman from Goldback on how we're going to come to Florida and change the physical bullion side to accept all bullion, including goldbacks and other orms like kinesis. So I think that when it comes to lobbying, it's all about the appetite, political appetite to make changes. And us and the other organizations spent a lot of money and a lot of time in Florida, and they just got fatigued. I mean, Rob can attest to that. The Senate staffers
They
that wrote
literally
the law,
told us that. They said, we're done with all you, get out of our office.
they
In the
were
nice
tired.
way. They were very nice about it, but
Yeah, they were just sick and tired of us, and we were running out of time, so we had to get something through. So yes, you know, there's other parties who think that we made a horrible law, but they didn't step a foot in the state and see how the process was done. And it's a lot more difficult when we're in there every single day, every week, working with every single stakeholder at the different states to actually write the legislation. Like, we wrote the draft legislation, they took over and fixed it. So it's a very tedious process, and it's not cheap. It's not like it's a few $100 travel there. It takes hundreds of thousands of dollars to successfully lobby and write legislation and work the legislature in person. So if you're listening to this and you want to support what we're doing and want us to come to your state, please join Citizens for Sound Money and become a Pioneer member. And if you want to give more, then please give more. And you get a direct phone call from me. If you give $10,000, I might fly and shake your hand and give you a hug for that. So please support the movement and join Citizens for Sound Money.
all right, we got a couple minutes left, only about 3, so I'm going to summarize. I think that Stuart has pointed out fairly some questions and some weaknesses in the law. I think, Daniel, you provided some insight as to how we got here. There's a roadmap to this, and it's not maybe as easy as we think. I don't think, at least at my time for C4SM, I don't think anybody, including Jim, the founder, and Marion and Reno, and us as an executive committee, ever felt like the final legislation in Florida, Texas was really what we wanted, or even in some of the other states with not forcing the states to accept it. But you have to understand the states have a say in this too. As far as I know, Sound Money Defense League, us, Economic War Room are all grassroots organizations started by independent people. And we have people come in and support us through industry, but it's not as if this is like a national platform. And it goes back to not having that industry association. So I'm looking forward to that industry association taking some of the concerns that Stuart and other people have had and maybe doing some workable solutions. So I'm going to give you each about 30 seconds to a minute to kind of end up. Stuart, with you, just ending this up, what would you like to see going forward with legislation, and how can people get involved and help so that we can make sure that that happens?
Well, I think they need to be informed. And I think Daniel's organization hopefully is going to do that. You and I hope the other podcasters out there in this space pick it up. But there are still a lot of unanswered questions for me. And one that was directed at me that I haven't had answered, and maybe you can help. This person that read my article on my Substack account said the problem with precious metal electronic payments is federal tax law, which I know nothing about, by the way. Every time you make payments in gold or silver, which must be sold and converted to US dollars, you create a taxable event. Until that goes away, there won't be any widespread adoption. Is that true?
It's only true if you're converting it to dollars. If I send you gold and silver, it's not a taxable event.
So will the state of Florida and these other states that have these electronic platforms have to be paying these fees?
No, the states don't pay it. It would be a federal. It would be income, capital gains tax. So if you sell gold and silver, for dollars, you're exchanging it for one currency to the other. There's a capital gain. But if I'm paying you with silver eagles, or I'm paying you with gold eagles, and there's no conversion,
Now, I'm not talking
gains.
about physical error. I'm talking about the electronic
Same
transaction.
thing with
We'll
electronic.
wrap it up because we're almost out of time. Zoom's going to kick us off. Thank you guys for joining. As far as capital gains goes, it's federal. And I told Jim at the beginning, it's going to be a state versus federal battle. So the bigger battle's actually coming. So stay tuned to this. to the channel, to Stuart, and to C4SM, and we'll do more. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Take care.
Hey guys, I just wanted to jump on at the end of this video to give some thoughts. I'll try to make it brief, but I had some comments that I wanted to make here. First of all, I wanted to thank both Daniel and Stuart for jumping on. They're both friends of mine. Stuart and I have known each other for years. He's been on the program many times. He's come to the virtual conferences that I used to run, and we have been friends for a good time. And I wanted to bring him on because he did have real concerns, and I wanted that public debate and that discourse to happen in a way in which it happens in public, and it's not like some types of videos and comments on social media I've seen that are basically attacking without open and engaging in a conversation. So I wanted to thank Stuart for doing that and coming on and voicing his concerns. Both Daniel and Stuart said they're going to come back for a part 2, so stay tuned to the channel for that. We'll do that probably in a couple of weeks, and we'll go deeper into it. One of the reasons we have to do 2 videos on this is because it's a very nuanced type of topic, which has a lot of moving parts, and I wanted to address some of that. First, I wanted to thank my friends and all the leaders there at Citizens for Sound Money who are doing this work to benefit the public. One of the things I wanted to point out is Citizens for Sound Money is the only, I'm going to say this again, Citizens for Sound Money is the only nonprofit that I know of that's working for the people on behalf of the people with no obvious profit motive to pass this legislation in states. Okay. That's a clue as to who are the other people that are involved. Now, some of the other people that are involved just basically don't trust the free market, and they've stated, face to face with me and other members of Citizens for Sound Money and with other members of other grassroots organizations that they don't trust the free market and they want the state to run this. And so they want to pass legislation like was passed in Arkansas, or what Arkansas proposed as national model policy, that they want the state to basically run the depositories. And the threat is that they can also set price there, which would also affect the market price, which, Citizens for Sound Money doesn't agree with. There were other instances where I pretty much determined that there was a direct profit motive behind the people that were interfering with legislation or trying to modify the legislation into a very specific type of legislation that would benefit certain parties in the gold market sector and the silver market sector, but X out others. In other words, we call this rent seeking. This is where legislation is passed that benefits a specific party in the name of some broader goal to benefit citizens. And as it comes out, it ends up not being that way. I saw that as well. And it's unfortunate that that happens in America. But when I talk to lawmakers, they said this is standard. Every time they see legislation come through, they put it through committees and they put it through this process of examination because they see it more often than not. I had one legislator tell me it's probably 90 to 100% of the time there's a profit motive behind a lot of this. And they were really interested in the fact that we were a nonprofit doing this and that we were able to bring in industry people that supported it. I also wanted to say at Citizens for Sound Money, we have a business association that's been created and is going to be rolled out soon, even though I'm not with them anymore, but I was a large part of that process in which 15 companies have come together, okay, and putting the interests of the public ahead of their own self-interest because their competitors coming together and agreeing on frameworks and an industry association that's going to benefit everybody. It will benefit merchants to be able to accept gold and silver. It will benefit providers that can provide gold and silver to the market. It'll benefit the state and the people and all the participants. And the agreements being written are being looked over by legal experts and people that have been in this space for a very long time. I wanted to also say that Citizens for Sound Money has very robust advisory boards and partners in the space that are legal experts in this space. Larry, who's been with the United Precious Metals Association and introduced the very first state legislation in Utah, worked very closely with us. He's a lawyer by trade and has been very involved in helping us understand the legislation. We have other lawyers. We have state representatives that have said, well, this is how we see it in our state. And by the way, every state's different. So the legislation is going to be different in every state because of nuances of how the state is run. The next thing I wanted to point out was there is a rulemaking process, and each rulemaking process is different in every state. And so the actual way it's going to be implemented is going to be different. And a lot of that's implemented by the state, not Citizens for Sound Money or not any of these other parties. And so there are restrainers in each state that you have to work with and get around or work through in order to get the legislation passed that you want. That's why it's not going to be the same in every state. And I wanted to personally thank Citizens for Sound Money for the opportunity to serve the public. I did not get paid for that. I was an unpaid volunteer who spent a lot of time on it. We together raised hundreds of thousands of dollars. We spent our own personal time, boots on the ground, trying to do this and trying to help the people. And Citizens for Sound Money also has a documentary series coming out next year where we look at the history of money, and it's going to go on major cable TV. And it's going to help educate people as to what sound money is. Again, Citizens for Sound Money is working for the people through training, education, and legislation. And it's the only group in America I know that's organized as a nonprofit to do that and is actually doing all of these things to help the public. Now, I want to address some of the concerns that Stuart had. He had some good ones. He said, I can't believe in any of this legislation that gold and silver are not to be, that the state is not going to accept it or is not going to help participate in the gold and silver market. And what Daniel pointed out is none of the legislation does that in any of the states, even before we got involved. Not Oklahoma, not Arkansas, not any of these, not Wyoming. And the reason is none of the states want to get involved because there is a cost to doing this. And in every single case where I was involved in talking to a legislator in whatever state it was, they all said, we want this to be zero cost. Our budgets are so stressed, we cannot pass legislation, even if there's a nominal cost to it. So we had to work with existing differing infrastructures within each state, whether it be money service business, banks, whatever, trusts. We couldn't create new legislation to create a new entity for this legislation to take place. It had to be an existing entity. So legislation in every state had to be different. And they were not going to get involved if there was a dollar to spend, and they were not going to get involved in actually ingesting gold and silver and doing the assay process or having any employees. They did not want to get involved. And so that wasn't the fault of any of the people, any of the organizations that came to argue this in front of the state to get this legislation. That was just table stakes. We could not, the states did not want to get involved in that level. That's just the way it is. If you have a concern over that as one of the residents of these states or prospective resident of a state that may be proposing this legislation, I highly encourage you to go down to your state office and to talk to legislators and say, hey, I want the state to accept and to be involved with the assaying and valuation of gold and silver in these products. We think it's important because if you don't do that, it's not going to happen. If you in your state do not mobilize and go down there, it will not happen. And it doesn't matter how much money we spend, it's not going to happen. You have to go down there and tell them it's important. I also wanted to talk about Stuart's other concern about digital currencies. He's saying, couldn't digitized gold and silver be part of the technocratic control system? And certainly it could be. Now, I want to say this. I work for a company that has a digital gold and silver product and the physical. I'm on the physical side. I prefer the physical, but I also participate in the digital. Is that going to be, the end of days type of deal where the state or the government or whoever takes over all the systems? Well, it could be, but a lot of other things would have to happen. First of all, you'd have to have a preferred digital currency that the state wants, like CBDCs. Well, that's a completely different topic. Then you would have to have asset forfeiture laws. Well, that's a completely different topic. We can talk about Dodd-Frank, and we could talk about how various regulatory three-letter agencies are abusing asset forfeiture laws, and we could talk about how the Congress passes, but that's completely different from gold and silver, whether it be digital or physical. Then we can talk about how AI apparently is set up. You've got Albania, which has a new AI minister that's serving in government. There's a party in Japan, I think it's the Reform Party. I'll have to go back and double check that. One of the parties in Japan is advocating for their representative to be AI. So you look at AI and the risk there and about how it doesn't have a soul, it's not human, it doesn't have feelings. You would have to have something like that. So there are a lot of other pieces, and you would have to have tokenization of all world assets, and you would have to have something where your constitutional rights to your assets in your jurisdiction, whether it be your state, your country, whatever the case may be, has to be overturned in law. So there has to be some crisis to precipitate this so that it's taken away from you. Your house is tokenized, your car is tokenized, so where you can't own anything. Okay, this is one of the things that we talked about with the WEF. Now, there are lots of other pieces that have to happen. So just digitizing a form of money, especially honest money, is not going to get us there. Now, could it be part of the tool that's used against the people? Sure, but lots of other things have to occur. And it's one of the reasons I left Citizens for Sound Money. That was planned for over a year, by the way. Once we got enough people to run it that we could pay and do full-time job, and I could go back to working my full-time job and come back to my business of educating you guys on the channel. I had to serve my time there. But one of the reasons I came out is because legislation by itself is not enough. We have to educate. And I'm going to be educating you guys not only on gold and silver, but also on all of these other things that we need to be aware of and that we need to be active in combating and restraining the state and the governments from doing to us, the people. Okay, we need to be the restrainer. And there's a biblical concept about being the restrainer. This is very important for us to get active. Okay. And so I can do more good coming out here and educating people. That's why I renamed my channel a year ago to the Freedom Report from Gold Silver Pros, because I'm not just going to cover gold silver anymore, but I had to finish my work at C4SM, get that pushed off and get it rolling. And it's rolling now. The business association, the educational piece, the legislative piece are all kicking off. And again, the only nonprofit I know that's doing that anywhere in the United States, so that I can come and educate you guys. One thing I wanted to say, and this is not any slight to Stuart, I really look at myself first and look at everybody else at the same time. I find it a bit disingenuous for someone to say, well, I wasn't involved in any of this, but I want to go and complain about the way that it resulted. And I want to complain about the way that you did it, and maybe even attribute some blame to some group potentially. And I'm not picking on Stuart here. We've received a lot of flack for the way the legislative process went, but I'm going to share with you a secret. First of all, we're the people working for the people. It's not like we're some institution set up by government and we get paid to do this. Almost none of us were paid, and Daniel was paid probably a half salary for a year and a half. You know, we have very little money coming in at one point. We're just doing this to help the people. And the fact of the matter is, if anybody says, well, I don't like the way that went down, and, you know, I'm not involved, but yet I want to complain about it, is disingenuous, because our system is set up that you should get involved. And I'm going to tell you one thing right now, with the speed that digital IDs are being rolled out and the speed that CBDCs are being rolled out, and with the tokenization of all assets coming to the world, not just America, I'm going to tell you right now, you don't have much time. And if everyone watching this video does not get involved in some active way and consistent and active way in some of these issues, whether it be the gold and silver legislation, the digital ID, the CBDCs, or any of this system, then you're going to end up a digital slave, and so are your children and ensuing generations after that. And that's going to happen because it's coming so fast that if every one of you watching this video doesn't get up and do something, whether write a letter, go to your state house, form your own grassroots organization, tell your neighbors, be active in doing something, then we're not going to make it. We're not going to fend off this system that is coming. Okay, we have to be the restrainers on the state. We have to be the ones that say, this is what we want. And if every one of you doesn't do it, it doesn't matter what Citizens for Sound Money does. And it doesn't matter how many videos we do talking about it and having these arguments about it. I love the arguments because it brings it to the public, but we must act based on the arguments. And we must also have honesty about how the process works and about what happened, and about who's involved, who are the ones that are involved for the people, and who are the ones that may be involved for other purposes. We need to have that open, honest discussion, because if we don't have that open, honest discussion, you're going to wake up tomorrow and you're not going to own anything, and you're not going to be very happy. And you're going to go back and say, wow, Rob did that video in 2025. Maybe I should have listened to him and done something. And this, ladies and gentlemen, this can come very quickly. This is not 10 years away. It may not even be 5 years away. A lot of the CBDC rollouts coming 2026, 2027. A lot of it's already here. The digital IDs, as Aaron came on my channel and stated, are slated to be done across the United States by 2027, 2028, and the rest of the world in about that same time frame. There's no time left for us to sit there and divide ourselves and argue about it. What we must do is come together and work together, and in a constructive way. We can have disagreements, but we must work through those disagreements to get a system and framework in place that supports the people and supports freedom, or else we know what the alternative is. Okay, I wanted to thank you next for allowing me to come into your living room all these years, whether it be my written work or whether it be the videos that I do, and speak to you about this and serve you in that way. I was so very proud to serve with Citizens for Sound Money. Those are, you know, my brothers in Christ, and they're my brothers in what we do here. And I appreciate them for the opportunity. I appreciate you allowing me to discuss the subject and bring these people on and have it. And what I want for you to do now is get active and take it upon yourselves to do something. If you have questions, ask me, and we'll do videos on it. And we'll talk about and bring some experts on to talk about what you can do, but certainly get active there. Last thing I wanted to say is God bless everybody. Everybody have a good night, and we'll be back to talk more about this very soon. So stay tuned to the channel as we do that.